And it seems to be a kind of lineal successor to the 60s psychedelic punk lo-fi art movement, scissors and glue, and you know, montage and collage, just taken into a 21st century milieu, if I can use that poncy word. And so it's an explosive, provocative, colourful, confrontational piece of aggressive pop punk art.
Okay.
And this is a convenient banner or umbrella. You know, there's always a tendency to want to label an artistic movement. I suppose it's a convenient way to umbrella a certain type of art, which is starting to enjoy a renaissance now. Well, this is the Five Gordons, and obviously a representation of 5 British Gordons who have some kind of cultural currency, or have had. So obviously the 2 prominent Gordons, the 2 most famous ones, Mr. Gordon Ramsay, of course, vomiting some peas, some skulls and some hundreds and thousands, the Globe, and of course Mr. Gordon Brown there with a hole in his head. These hands at the bottom here are Mr. Gordon Brown's hands, and if you observe there, the fingernails are bitten right down to the very bones. The hands of a man under stress. The original idea here was to have a red carpet, which was going to be Gordon Ramsay's tongue, and it was an overhead aerial shot of Brown and his wife doing the Guard of Honour when they came into Downing Street. So originally there was a long red tongue coming out of Gordon Ramsay's mouth, and they were going to be walking the plank symbolically into Gordon Brown's own head. But that didn't really work, so I overlaid these skulls and these hundreds and thousands to replace it. The Globe was there, "In God We Trust," which is a lame pun, but I thought it would work well as the centrepiece there. And then the other Gordons, the peripheral Gordons, of course Gordon Banks there, wrestling a ball from the hidden George Best, who would have been about there. Gordon the Gopher, children's icon of the 80s and 90s, has been rebranded as some kind of urban gun-toting terror maniac with his camouflage jacket there, holding a gun to the head of none other than Pete Doherty, who, Pete Doherty and Kate Moss have just been stuck in there as an afterthought. I've given the policemen's helmets and tamper with their faces to make them look slightly abnormal. You don't have to work too hard to do that. And there they are in a field full of sheep. Now, Lord Gordon of Khartoum, colonial troublemaker and politician, I didn't know what to do with him, so he's having his head filled with sand by a beekeeper in a kind of tribute to Terry Gilliam, Monty Python-esque kind of stuff, which was my inspiration to start montage artwork many years ago, because it seemed like the quickest, easiest way of getting the ideas in my head onto a paper without having any technical ability. So he's just a humorous kind of vignette there. I didn't want to tamper too much with Gordon Banks because he's a bit of a folk hero. But I think Gordon Brown and Gordon Ramsay are fair game because they're media profile, high profile people, and they should be able to put their heads on the chopping block. So there's a small chihuahua there with Gordon Ramsay's face on. I suspect his bite probably is worse than his bite, although who can say. And so there's Gordon Brown actually peering out of Gordon Ramsay's head there. That's the Hubble telescope there, and if you look very closely you can see little people walking around. He's just looking at the universe. And then down here, political in inverted commas, we've got the Twin Towers there with the legend, "Suppose a little war breaks out, rather improbable, don't you think?" That's a quote from some old thing that just found its way onto my table, and I thought that's quite appropriate. There's some people in Guantanamo Bay not looking very happy. I thought it was important to actually address the politics of the time. So hence the skull and Thatcher. I stuck that Thatcher there in her pink hat, just looking over Cameron's shoulder, and Cameron sitting there grooming and patting Brown, waiting for his turn in the game of musical chairs. And ironically, Margaret Thatcher, within a month of me doing this picture, she was wearing a very similar colour and going for dinner with this Gordon Brown who claimed to despise her 5 years earlier. So, what a surprise. But of course, also the week that this was being created, we were lashed with major storms, and Brown seemed to come in on a crisis after a crisis, really, with the you know, the Glasgow car bombing thing, and which just gave him an excuse to stand up and look tough, and the storms to prove, and he was a strong leader, but certainly a worried leader. So I wanted to distill all that, really, and capture a turbulent, traumatic moment in British history with a bit of humour.